Well, good afternoon from the Sandy Bob Show. Today is February 26th, and we will be asking for call-ins today for questions and maybe some things you can tell. I'm going to hand the program over to my husband, and he will continue. Hold on.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today should be a lot of fun. I'm calling it Open Lines because I want anybody that's called in to chime in and add to the discussion. And I thought there's several different subjects I want to talk about today. And one subject that I thought was kind of interesting was, and this I didn't even know this until last night. I was listening to Coast to Coast, as I frequently do, and I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll turn it on and listen to it for maybe 15 or 20 minutes and then turn it off and try to go back to sleep. But last night, George had a special guest on, and his name was Brett Farrell from Australia, and he specialized in releasing entities. As you know, that sometimes if people get weak spots in their auras or go through traumas or something, you'll have entities that have passed over that will glom onto somebody and maybe their mental body or whatever it is. For anybody that knows really what this is all about, please, their astral body, please chime in. But he said that he's not a Christian, but he did learn that individuals have a tremendous amount of power that they're not even aware of. And he went through college and became trained as a hypnotherapist. And when he discovered that he could help people get he could help people get rid of their entities. And what he does is, and it's very simple. He says that the reason why people glom onto other people is because after they pass over, they're lost. They're like in a dark zone, and they have no clue as to where they are. They're just totally lost. And he says what will happen is they will come across a human being that's still alive on the physical plane, and they can relate to that, so they glom onto them, and just like going for a horseback ride, they just glom onto them, and that gives them a sense of reality. And some of these people that pass over are kind of funky. There's good ones, bad ones, all sorts. But what he says is that he has the ability to actually contact these entities. He doesn't have to be present. He can. All you have to do is call him up and tell him about who you are, where you are, and what the situation is, and he can actually contact the entities. And he says it's trauma-free. It's not like an exorcism or anything, but all he does is tell these people, that, hey, you can have your own life. Just go into the white light. And he directs them to the white light, which is probably the white light of the astral plane or maybe the causal plane. He didn't explain. Maybe he doesn't even know. But anyway, as soon as he points these entities to the white light, they're delighted to leave. At least they have direction, and off they go, and then they leave the person alone after that. So I really thought that was really kind of interesting. And anybody, before I continue on, does anybody have any comments about entities globbing onto people and their auras when they were traumatized or had weak spots or got drunk and invited them in or whatever? I thought it was kind of interesting. He has a contact site in Australia. He has a website and where you contact information. One of the other things that he brought up, and I thought, Claudia, you might find this very interesting. He says not only do humans that passed over glom onto people, he says a bunch of aliens will glom onto people also, and ETs. And he says that they are extremely resistant to go into the white light. They don't want to. Once they glom onto somebody, they don't want to let them go. And Brett Farrell, this guy I'm talking about, learned that he has the power to tell these aliens if they don't leave this guy alone and just go somewhere else, that he will put them, he will make it impossible for them to ever get back to their home planet. And he locks them out and puts them in kind of like a, I don't know exactly what it is, like the, maybe the Phantom Zone for all I know, but he makes it impossible for them to go back to their home planet. And he says in most cases they don't believe him. And then he says, well, okay, let me give you a demonstration. And he actually has the power to demonstrate that he can keep them from going anywhere, just lock them up and freeze their ability to travel. And he makes a believer out of them, and then they leave the person and leave them alone after that. Have you heard anything about anything like that, Claudia?
Hello, this is Claudia in Texas. Yes, some of that information is right on. In fact, most of it is right on, and it is a subject that is now becoming more popular in discussions because the aliens that are here in the physical, and especially the ones that have focused or zeroed in on the planet Earth, we're very attractive to many different species for various reasons. Some species are here to collect minerals, gold, silver, whatever. Others are here to collect water, or plants or animals consume flesh or meat. And they don't differentiate between a cow and a human. Both are the same to the hungry, flesh-eating extraterrestrials. One of the things about glomming onto them, it's easy to access the energy of a human when they're unaware and don't believe that they're any extraterrestrials. It just makes it easier for the entity to do that. And the reason they do that is because they're able to siphon off the I guess you could say, emotional energy of the person. When you're really afraid or scared or whatever, this is the most delicious food to those types of entities. So they attach themselves to the body, usually around the spine area or in any of the pineal gland area, anywhere that there's an easy access point. The extraterrestrials collect this energy and store it. They have means and capabilities of doing this. And a lot of movies, TV shows, whatever, have been about this type of procedure, but even though it's very factually presented, a lot of people cannot accept that information. It just doesn't seem real to them. And all you can say is, well, before we discovered gravity, quote unquote, the idea was something else. But after we discovered it and scientifically studied it, then we became familiar with it and weren't afraid of it anymore. But we still had the old ways in the early centuries of having spells and witches and witchcraft to explain these phenomena that occurred in front of us, but we had no information about. So we're still in a quandary in the 21st century. So, okay, here we go. We're having an adventure in areas that we were unfamiliar with. But we're being educated very slowly and very carefully into what is happening around us. And this is helping us to wake up, to become aware of what's going on, and to question. You know, curiosity is a sign of intelligence, and that you're curious about something, you go and look for it. Maybe, like example, when we go on the internet and we're Googling some subject we want to know more about. Well, all the information is brought up in pages of information and websites and people. And there are shows like George Nouri's Coast to Coast. He investigates all subjects that is giving information out to people to help them better live their life. When people have tragedies like a sickness or an illness or things like that, they're into that frequency, that vibration. And this attracts those extraterrestrials who feed on that type of energy. It doesn't matter. Like some people can eat some types of food and not be bothered by it, and other people can't eat that type of food and be bothered by it. Like peanuts. Peanuts can be very difficult for some people to digest because of certain factors in their physical makeup. But we're not the only creatures on the planet. Bees eat honey. Reptiles eat flesh or fish or whatever. So we have a whole gamut of opportunity to observe other life forms and how they live. The only thing is that we're only observing in a very narrow range of life, that's which is on our planet. And we haven't quite, I'm going to say most of us, haven't quite gotten to the point where we can accept that there are other living forms of corporeal life that have a different lifestyle than we do. We've got to get to the point of being able to accept that information and then deal with it personally. It's going to take some education. Maybe we have to meet a reptilian entity, extraterrestrial, face to face, and then come to the realization that they might know more than we do. So as we go along, life enlarges itself in front of us. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Claudia. That was wonderful. You know, another thing that this gentleman had to say was I found very interesting was after, remember that Indonesian airliner that disappeared and MH what was it, 3700 or it was that airliner, and it kind of disappeared off all the charts, MH 3700 or something like that, or 370. Anyway, right, that was in March of several years ago, and right after the crash, Red said he was with a group of people that decided to see if they could use their abilities to locate that aircraft. And he said as soon as he started meditating or dwelling on that, he found himself underwater. And he found himself in the fuselage of the aircraft, which was underwater. And he said the fuselage was broken in half from impact. And he wound up in the back of the fuselage. And there was an Asian lady there. And this Asian lady was kind of screaming, you know, she was just, you know, screaming out loud, why didn't they fix it? Why didn't they fix it? You know, they knew we were way off course. Why didn't they do anything? Why didn't they do anything? And he started screaming as soon as she saw this guy that went to visit, she started screaming at him, you know, why didn't they do anything? And as he was there underwater looking at her, he noticed that most of the other people, there wasn't anybody else around. And apparently all the other people that had died in the crash had left the scene. They'd gone off to the white light or someplace. They were no longer there, but this Asian lady was there, and he was trying to figure out why this Asian lady was still there. And so he started looking around the cabin, and he noticed that toward the back of the aircraft there was 2 Asian adults with 2 children. And as soon as he saw them in the back of the craft, this Asian lady had not seen them. Right?
Yep.
Anyway, so he notices this Asian couple toward the back of the aircraft, and this Asian lady up front didn't even know they were there, and he turns her around and says, "Hey, are you with them?" And as soon as she saw them, she recognizes that was the rest of her family, and they all together, and boom, they went off into the white light. And then after that, he decided, well, I'm going to go up front and check out the cockpit. And when he got up in the cockpit, the captain of the aircraft was still sitting in the pilot seat, and he was like in shock. He was just sitting there in the cockpit, totally in shock over what he did. Apparently, the pilot intentionally took it off course and crashed it. And the pilot was just in a state of, it was like in a stupor, in a state of shock over the gravity of what he had done. And so he checked with the other people that he deals with, the other guides or whatever you want to call it that he occasionally works with, and he was told to leave the guy alone, that there was nothing that could be done for that pilot. He was in such a state of shock for what he had done that there was nothing they could do. Just leave him be, and then right after that, he found himself back in the room with the other therapy session people, and he related the story to everybody. And then later on, he said he actually went back to check on the captain, and when he went back later on, the captain finally figured out what was going on, and he left, and he went off to the white light, but he was no longer inside the aircraft. So it was. You have something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say that the pilot of that plane was Hi, this is Sandy, Bob's wife. The pilot of that plane was actually a programmed robotic.
He was.
And he was programmed to crash the plane. Was
he physical or is he a robot?
No, he was a robot.
Well, that could explain why why he was told there was nothing that could be done with the guy if he was a robot. That's the first I heard of that. Anybody else have any comments or like to add anything about this particular story?
Yes, this is Claudia in Texas, just the fact that there are robots, quote unquote, walking among us, look just like us and act and react just like us, humans, and we don't know it. And but we're learning about it now when we get robot calls from companies advertising their product for you to buy. So much sophistication has come about in our technology that now we can be fooled real easy. And robots are almost as what you would call close to sentient as possible. And they do have awarenesses. And so the pilot, was in shock and couldn't be reached. But all of a sudden, a right signal was given, and he was able to react to the situation, understand it, and then move away from it, move out of the situation. It was like being locked in a program on a computer. You have to press Control Alt Delete to stop the computer to get out of the program. And this is the same way with humans. We can be easily, mesmerized into a certain thought pattern, and it'll take quite a bit of manipulation, maybe a sound, a loud sound, or something like that to jar us awake. And right now, most of the population on this planet, in my opinion, is that they're totally asleep and are just reacting to the situation of the moment and haven't got to the point of asking what's going on. As soon as we start to ask what's going on, we start noticing things, little incidences that come to our attention, and it helps us to wake up and get out of the stupor that we're in. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Claudia. I didn't know about the robots. So, like in the Star Trek movie Data, he's a real entity, and they're out there, huh?
Yes, sir. Look just like us. Act and react. just like those robot calls you get on the phone to buy carpeting for your house or siding or new roof, and they could pretty much handle a normal interaction. But if you ask the robot caller a question that's out of sequence, that they're not prepared for, they can't continue. Like, how's your mother doing? You know, that just stops the conversation right there. So
yeah, how's the weather where you're at? You know?
Yes, and especially a sentence like, how's your mother doing? They're not prepared for that. And so they have no answer to respond. So it gets more and more interesting. And we're being introduced into sales tactics that are being used to promote a product or get you to buy something. I mean, look at the football games or the baseball games now coming up. A lot of advertising of the sponsors of a show, like in the halftime program, they entertain you and give you a moment to go get the snacks at the snack bar or whatever. This is a whole setup just to get your dollar. And you willingly give up your dollar to buy your Coca-Cola or whatever. As we go along, we're learning more. And the ones who are really fast at catching on are children. The youngsters, even though that they are marketed for toys or games or whatever, and right now gaming on your little computer, handheld device is fascinating. It's captured thousands, millions of kids, and they are being introduced to different concepts in these games. Most of them destructive because it's a blow up something game, so or kill somebody, the bad guy, and it could be anybody from a drug dealer to an extraterrestrial. It's a new way of living in the year 2019 on the planet Earth. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Claudia. That is so informative, and thank you, Sandy. We should have talked about that some other time, but first I ever heard it before.